Hi everyone, I hope you're staying safe at home, and I just wanted to add this little video. I think it's useful to explain why giving credit to sources is really helpful for readers and isn't just a big headache that writers have to do and hoops that writers have to jump through in order to not plagiarize. So we're going to talk about this briefly today. Right, so here I have this plagiarism flowchart, and there's a copy of this on Blackboard. You can pause the video to look at it, but there's also a copy of the flowchart on Blackboard, and you can start kind of in this top and ask, did I plagiarize? And it goes through these series of questions, including, are you confident that your ideas are your own, or that they are so obviously common knowledge, like the fact that the earth is round, that you didn't need to cite any sources? And as you answer yes to these series of questions, it will tell you, no, you didn't plagiarize, good job. If you end up answering no to any of these questions, then the flowchart takes you to yes, you did plagiarize, and then how serious is it? And our levels of severity range from identity theft, which is insanely plagiarized, meaning that you stole, copied, or purchased another person's entire document and taking credit for that being your own, to this kind of mild severity where you cited mostly everything correctly but got a bit sloppy on some of your citations and failed to note small things like page numbers or publishers. Now, if you're kind of working in this red zone here, you're probably going to end up failing the paper for this class. However, I do know that you are learning citations, so if you're kind of messing up citations, you got something incorrect, you've mixed up periods on your citation format, you're not going to get in trouble for that. You're not going to get accused of plagiarism. I do have, we'll call him an acquaintance, who was at Miami University, and he finished his degree at Miami University, and in his senior capstone he did not have, his documentation wasn't accurate, and there were some pieces of information missing, and it wasn't done correctly, and he ended up having to repeat his entire senior year at Miami University because of those little hiccups and mess-ups. So eventually, citing your work is really important, and it's really important not just because it helps you from plagiarizing, but it's really important for readers. And there's those three pieces of giving credit to sources. We did two of them for the last essay. We started with signal phrases. You might hear those being called attributive tags or in-text attributions. And what a signal phrase does is it introduces the source for the reader, and it gives the reader information for trusting the source in the context of the topic. So when we were talking about all of those sources from our textbook and from our Blackboard course and how those were helpful in explaining the writing process to other students, those signal phrases, we could use credentials such as being a writer, being an author, for our reader to trust those. Now, as we're thinking about technology and privacy, we have to think about why those sources are trustworthy in the context of that topic. And signal phrases are really kind of a nice way to really kind of catch yourself from that plagiarism trap. The works cited page has all of those rules and regulations because the point of the works cited page is that it helps the reader find the exact same source that the writer used. So if students were using the same sources from the textbook or our Blackboard course, then their citations on that works cited page for those sources are going to be identical because the citation is giving the reader those pieces of information so that the reader can find that exact same source. Now, some people looked at the citations that I put up on Blackboard to show you where I got the source, and they said, well, I could just copy and paste that one, but that would be incorrect. You do not have that original context that the source existed in, and so you had to give credit to our Blackboard course because that's the context where you had that information. Now, the third piece that we're adding for this essay 4 are parenthetical references. Some style manuals will call them in-text citations. And what those do is they help the reader identify the source on the works cited page. Now, the signal phrase can do that. If I've got the author's name in my signal phrase, I can find that author on my works cited page. However, sometimes I might want to use the title of the container to give credit to the source, to show that it's trustworthy. And so then what that parenthetical reference does is it works with that signal phrase to give the reader information to find that source on the works cited page. And then it also helps, it adds another piece of information, and it helps the reader pinpoint the location of the source information within the original source. And you'll notice with MLA, our parenthetical references, we call them author page style citations. They have the author's name because that's usually the first piece of information that appears on that works cited page, and then it has the page number, the location of the source information. Right. It's important to think about these pieces of documentation as tools, not rules. They're not rules trying to restrict you and make it really difficult for you to use research, but you want to think of them as tools that give your reader information to further explore the topic. And remember, when we talked about the academic audience is interested in exploring your ideas to be able to expand on the existing ideas in order to contribute to human knowledge. So we're going to look at an example from the OWL's website here that utilizes all three of these pieces of documentation, and rather than trying to piece them together into our own papers, we're going to think about them as readers. So to look at a sample paper, I am actually going to go to Purdue University's online writing lab. You can usually just type in the OWL, Purdue online writing lab. You guys also have a number of links to Purdue University's online writing lab. They're this great, amazing, free, comprehensive resource. They're like an online style manual. So if you lost your pocket style manual, if it's with someone who's ill, if it got too beat up because you had it in your pocket and it's no longer functional, you've got this online style manual through Purdue University. And I'm just going to scroll down here to their most popular resources, and I want to look at the MLA Formatting and Style Guide. Now, if you ever have a class where you have to use APA Formatting and Style, they have a style manual on the Purdue OWL. It's really handy. So I'm going to go to MLA Formatting and Style Guide. I'm going to check out, they're going to start these videos, so I'm going to pause that because I don't want to watch it. I'll get sucked in. And then I'm going to kind of use this table of contents on the side here, and I want to look at a sample paper. All right. Click the link because I want it to be bigger. All right, so here's my sample paper, and they have these really cool boxes that kind of tell us, the green boxes contain explanations of the MLA style guidelines, and the blue boxes contain directions for writing and citing in the MLA style. Now, you guys are really familiar with kind of the setup of an MLA paper, but I want to look at our three pieces of documentation in action here. So I'm going to actually scroll to page 5. Now, there are other pieces of documentation prior to that, but this one I think does a nice job of illustrating how they all work together. And we've got this highlighted sentence here, and it says, in his 1825 book, Nature and Reason Harmonized in the Practice of Husbandry, John Lorraine begins his first chapter by stating that very erroneous theories have been propagated, resulting in faulty farming methods. All right, so we can identify a couple pieces of giving credit to sources in this already. We've got an author that we can identify, might be brought up later, maybe not, but we can identify John Lorraine as someone who has written something, and then we have our reason to trust him, is that he wrote a book called Nature and Reason Harmonized in the Practice of Husbandry. Now, we also have the date that this book was published. That's not always essential, but in this case it's showing that it's pretty old and that it's contextualizing the pieces of information that are in this particular essay here. All right, at the end of the sentence, you'll notice before the final period here that there's the number 1 in parentheses. Now, if we think about MLA documentation, parenthetical references, we already have the author's name in the actual text of the sentence, in that signal phrase. So in our parenthetical reference, we would get the page number. Now, if I was a reader, I would maybe be interested in trusting this source. Okay, sounds good. And if I wanted to do further research, I might say, this sounds kind of interesting. Or maybe I'm just interested because a book about farming from 1825 is my bag of chips. All right, so then what I would be able to do with these 2 pieces of information in this sentence is I would be able to scroll down, this is a super long paper that you can have notes, to my Works Cited page, and I could find Lorraine, John. Here we go. Here's my citation. My Works Cited page is in alphabetical order, so I can find Lorraine's last name pretty easily. And then because I have this citation here, I was already given the name of the book in that signal phrase, but now I've got publication information and the date of publication. And if I wanted to find that exact same quote and read the original context in which that quote appeared rather than the synthesized and analyzed context that the author of this paper provided, I can go back to that book, I can find it from that particular publisher, and then I can go to page 1 is what that parenthetical reference is telling me. Now, most readers, it's true, are going to ignore this information, but again, it's really important in academia for people to be able to see where your ideas started from and where they came from so that they can do further research. Now, my husband always talks about how, yeah, when I was in undergrad, I totally ignored all of this stuff. And then suddenly I got to my senior capstone and I was ripping out citation pages from academic journals, ones that he owned, not library ones. Don't rip book pages out of library books. But he would rip out these citation pages so that he could reference different ideas later. And then in graduate school, I feel like you would find a source on this really bizarre topic that you're looking at, and you would not really read the article itself, but you would look at the citation page to see kind of where you could kind of piece together your own ideas and get those working. So it's really important for this kind of communication and this aggregation of knowledge about a particular topic to have all these citations and have accurate citations and have those pieces of documentation working together. And again, don't think of them as these really horrible and restrictive rules where usually in English there's a couple different ways to do things correctly, and now all of a sudden there's only one way to do these things correctly. But think about it as tools that are giving your reader the information about the sources that you have so that that reader trusts the sources so that they can find the exact same source that you used and they have that information.